Okay, everyone, I'd like to have your attention. It's my pleasure to call the City Council Department Budget Presentation to order and ask the City Clerk to please call a roll.
Mayor Hall.
Here.
Vice Mayor Hanson.
Here.
Councilmember Rivera. Councilmember Maxwell.
Here.
Councilmember Weir. Councilmember Smith.
I'm here.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Here.
Councilmember Parlier.
Here.
In order to comply with the Brown Act, we will now receive public statements. All statements are given a 3-minute time limit, 15 minutes per subject. Madam Clerk, are there any public statements?
We do not have any public statements at this time.
The next item will be item number 3, workshops. Nelson Smith, please.
Thank you, Mayor Hall, members of council, Nelson Smith, Finance Director. It's my pleasure to provide you with a workshop on fund accounting and governmental budgeting practices. Some of the items I'll be discussing include fund accounting, types of funds, number of funds, the non-departmental budget, transfers in and out, fund balance, encumbrance, and manager carryovers. So what is fund accounting? Fund accounting is a tool for organizing and presenting data about financial resources that highlights the fact that certain resources have been segregated for the purpose of carrying on specific activities or attaining certain objectives in accordance with special regulations, restrictions, or limitations. Some of the components that make up a fund include a set of accounts that are used to compile a balance sheet and an income statement. Balance sheet includes asset accounts, liabilities, and equity accounts. The income statement includes revenues, expenses, other sources, and uses. Some of the categories of funds include governmental, proprietary, and fiduciary. Governmental activities and funds are used to account for activities primarily supported by taxes, grants, or other similar revenue sources. Proprietary or business-type activities are used to account for activities that receive significant support from fees and charges for service, where fiduciary activities and funds are used to account for resources that a government holds as a trustee or agent on behalf of an outside party. Governmental funds include several categories. One is the general fund. We have special revenue funds that include CDBG block grant funds. The federal TRIP earmark funds are in this category, state gas tax, and supplemental law enforcement grants. We have debt service funds for general government and the successor agency debt. We have capital project funds for capital outlay funds, utility surcharge, park development, and transportation development. Some of the proprietary or business-type funds, there are actually two categories. One is for enterprise and the other for internal service. Under enterprise funds, we have wastewater treatment, solid waste, ag and domestic water, municipal airport, and the parking garage. And for internal service funds, we have equipment management and self-insurance. Fiduciary funds include trust accounts and agency funds. Under trust accounts, we have special deposits that would include things like park maintenance districts, general plan maintenance, seized asset trust funds, habitat conservation trust funds, etc. We also have the other post-employment benefit irrevocable trust for the retiree medical program, as we have the Fireman's Disability and Retirement Fund. We have 22 agency funds to account for the special assessment districts and community facility districts we have in Bakersfield. Let's talk a minute about the number of funds. For accounting purposes, we have 80 individual fund account groups where we collect and maintain detailed financial data. For financial reporting, when we present the audited financial statements, we actually take those 80 funds and blend them into 27 fund groups. GASB application often involves the treating of two or more funds used for accounting purposes as a single fund for financial reporting purposes. So let me give you an example. The wastewater treatment fund actually has three separate funds. There's a fund for Plant 2 operations, Plant 3 operations, and then the sewer connection fees. When we get to financial reporting on an annual basis, we blend all those funds together, so the one enterprise of wastewater management. Why do we have non-departmental budgets? Well, there are some costs that just don't fit into a specific department, operation group, or a capital project category. In the general fund, some of the non-departmental items include retiree medical costs, accrued leave payouts, property tax administration fees, auditing costs, contributions to other agencies. We might set aside funds for a possible cost of living increase or possible medical cost increase, and then, of course, council contingency funds. So these are all examples of non-departmental items in the general fund. Outside the general fund, we also have retiree medical costs and then debt service payments, including not only the principal and interest due, but other legal or professional services that support the debt service activities, such as continuing disclosure or fiscal agent fees. Next topic, transfers in and out. There are two primary reasons to transfer cash from one fund to another. One is for debt service funding, and the other is for capital project funding. The first example would be HUD funds are transferred from the CDBG fund to the city's debt service fund to pay principal and interest on a Section 108 loan. Another example would be funds are transferred from the hotel tax fund to the capital outlay fund to fund various capital improvement projects. This year, that transfer is primarily for roads resurfacing. Example 3, funds are transferred from the primary transportation development fund to a sub-TDF fund to segment the trip project costs from non-trip project costs. Another example would be funds are transferred from the sewer connection fund to the sewer plant number 3 fund to partially cover some of the debt service costs associated with the plant expansion. And the final example would be funds are transferred from the successor agency operating funds to the debt service funds to properly account for and pay the debt service costs of the agency. Next topic is fund balance. So let's talk about what is fund balance, how is it calculated, what causes it to go up or down. Fund balance is the net financial position of a governmental fund. For enterprise funds, fund balance is also called retained earnings, and for enterprise funds, we measure net current assets for budgetary purposes. So how is fund balance calculated? We have current assets minus current liabilities. Current assets being cash, investments, and receivables, and current liabilities being accounts payable, monies held in trust, and deferred revenue, which is cash has been received but not yet earned. What causes fund balance to go up or down? Well, variances of revenues to expenses during the year, and we have transfers in and out of the fund during the year. So, for example, the wastewater fund collects operating revenue of $34 million. They have operating expenses of $33 million, so fund balance goes up by $1 million. Example number 2, the refuse fund collects operating revenues of $42 million. They have operating expenses of $43 million, and they have a transfer out of $1 million of cash to the equipment fund to buy some new garbage trucks. In this example, the fund balance goes down by $2 million, $1 million from the operating loss and $1 million from the transfer out. What makes up the general fund balance? At June 30th, 2015, the general fund balance was $40,780,089. It was made up of a cash basis reserve of $12.8 million. There was $19.6 million designated for the new year budget, $6.6 million in reserve for vacation sick payouts. We had $1.2 million reserved for encumbrances, and an undesignated remainder of approximately $384,000. Over the last 8 years, the average general fund balance has been slightly over $51 million. So you can see the 51 million average over the last 8 years. At June 30, 2015, the fund balance was $40 million, and we're estimating at June 30 of 2016 that the fund balance is going to drop down to about $33 million. Encumbrance carryovers are the remaining balances of open purchase orders that are carried forward from one budget year to the next based on remaining contractual balances at each June 30th. And manager carryovers are city manager approved carry forwards of funds budgeted for either grant-related costs or capital projects that have previously been approved by the city council in either the current or a prior fiscal year. A couple examples of encumbrance carryovers. Example one, the city's issued a purchase order for the purchase of a fire truck. The order was placed in May of 2016, but the truck won't be delivered until April of 2017. The budgeted funds for the purchase are carried forward into the new fiscal year to pay for the truck upon delivery. Example two, the city issued a construction contract to reconstruct a section of road. The purchase order was issued to track the progress of the payment on the construction. Completion of the project is not expected until next year. The remaining funds budgeted for the project are carried forward into the new year to pay for the work upon completion. An example of manager carryovers, the police department receives a federal grant to pay for community policing activities. The grant was awarded in fiscal 15-16, but the grant period runs into the next fiscal year. The manager's office authorizes the remaining grant funds to be carried forward into the new fiscal year. And example two, a capital project budgeted in the current fiscal year. Some preliminary design work has been done, but construction has not been awarded. The manager's office authorizes the funds budgeted for the construction to be carried forward into the new fiscal year. That concludes my presentation. I hope this was helpful. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Sullivan.
Thank you, Mayor. You have a good team, Nelson. That's a lot of very important information, a lot of details. You're using the term fund accounting. That's the first time I've heard you use that. Has that process been in place for some time, or have we upgraded the system?
Mayor Hall, Councilmember Sullivan, fund accounting has been around a long time. We have received some questions regarding how we account for our money, and so I wanted to give kind of a background of how governmental accounting works and how we use a series of funds to track different types of activities.
I see in all the different categories. That was
Yes.
interesting, Nelson. Thank you.
Councilmember Maxwell.
Thank you, Mayor Hall. Nelson, thank you very much. It was very informative and educational. I had a question on number 14, example number 3. Funds are transferred from primary transportation development funds to a sub-transportation development fund to segment trip project costs from non-trip project costs. Could you give me an example of that?
Sure. The Transportation Development Fund is designed to track the revenues collected for that specific fee. When we started the TRIP program, we decided to track those costs separately to anticipate questions. So how much is spent on TRIP, how much is spent on non-TRIP, those kind of things. So we've segmented the projects into 2 groups, and we created a separate fund within the transportation development activities to track specific projects. So all of the TRIP projects are accounted for in one fund, and all the non-TRIP projects are accounted for in another fund. It's all transportation development revenue being used to pay for those projects.
Do we normally, on a yearly basis, get a delineation of how the transportation development funds are done? Is that part? I know it's part of your budgetary process, but do we ever say have a line item that says this is what we've taken in transportation development funds, this is what went to TRIP, this is what went to the other things? I
know that you receive a report once a year of transportation development expenses by project, and they're commingled because, again, it's all the same revenue source. So all of those projects are commingled, but I think they are specified.
Well, they're each one specified, I know that, but.
Project by project.
But as you're going from the TDF fund into either a non-trip or a trip, do we ever get that number for each one of those different expenses delineated out for us?
I don't think that's been done specifically, but it can be done.
Okay, yeah, I think that'd be an interesting number to look at. And then at the very last, you talk about the example number 2, capital project budgeted, some preliminary design work might be done, but the construction not awarded. Would the carryover of the Centennial Corridor, the money that we're putting aside to qualify for TIFIA, would that be an example of that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rivera.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Nelson. I apologize for being a little bit late, but I think I got the bulk of your presentation. I had a few quick questions. On slide 11, under non-departmental budget, I'm curious, do we have plans to set aside any COLA, potential COLA increases or potential medical cost increases in this budget we're going to be adopting at the end of the month?
Councilmember Rivera, there are no set-asides
Okay.
in the proposed budget for COLAs. There are certainly set-asides for current year and audit-related medical costs. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. On slide 18, fund balance continued. Was the example you gave just an example, or is that the example related to the wastewater fund? Is that actually the case that they have $1 million they put into a fund, or was that just an example?
It was just an example.
Perfect. Okay. I was going to ask questions about the example. Okay, so then disregard that. Could we go to slide 20? Fund balance continued. And this is the makeup of the general fund balance. This one's curious to me. And I guess this is really, at least for the last 3 years, what I've really tried to understand related to the budget specifically. Unless this is an example, as I understand this, there is a general fund balance of just over $40 million at the end of this fiscal year, or at the end of last year's fiscal. What year are we in? We're in 2016. So at the end of last year, so one quick question: does this number, or would this number have included any encumbrance or manager carryovers, or is that separate from this fund balance?
The $40 million number includes $1.2 million of encumbrance funds that were carried forward to the next year budget.
Okay, but no manager carryovers?
Right. We rarely have any manager carryovers in the general fund.
Okay.
Unless they're related to maybe some police grant activities. It'd be a small amount.
Okay. It's June 6th, so I'm assuming we can begin to project what this general fund balance might look like for the end of this fiscal year
Yes,
budget, correct?
That's the $33 million number at the bottom.
Got it. Okay. And of that 33 million, is there another encumbrance carryover?
There will be. The encumbrance amount to be carried forward will depend on what purchase orders are remaining open at June 30th.
Will it include a manager carryover? Or no?
To the extent there are some grant funds that have been unspent that need to carry forward into a new accounting period, yes.
Okay, but the bulk of the $33 million isn't represented in either of those carryovers.
That's correct.
Okay.
Part of that funding is being used to balance the 16-17 proposed budget, and I'm looking at Chris to see what was that number? I think it's $15.5 million. So 15.5 of that $33 million is planned to be used to balance next year's budget.
Okay. So is it a council policy or an internal policy that we have a cash basis reserve?
That is a council policy.
Okay.
And in fact, the council has voted fairly recently, within the last 3 or 4 years, to retain all interest earned on that money and leave it in that account.
Okay. So so we retain the interest and leave it in the account. Is there a minimum the council has directed staff to maintain every fiscal year? Sorry, guys.
Let me start, if I may, Councilmember Rivera, and then Nelson can finish. The original main reason for a cash basis reserve is because of the cyclical nature of some of our major revenues. Some of our major revenues come in, like sales tax. While there's variance from quarter to quarter, we get money every quarter, and we do a fairly good job of predicting that. In the case of property taxes, however, they come in primarily twice a year. And so we have to have money in the bank to get by, to operate, to pay people, to pay medical costs and related during that time period when we're waiting for the property tax money to be received. There are other revenues, lesser in amount, which have cyclical elements. The cash basis reserve is originally, I think, Nelson, correct me if I'm wrong, was set at a level that bought our time through that cyclical revenue stream, and we realized somewhere along the line that it can never be too much, and so we added the interest earnings to stay with it with council approval a few years ago. So that amount is never used. It only goes up with interest earnings. It never goes down. And the consequence of using it would be that we would have to borrow to operate and pay interest rather than earning interest during that cyclical period when we're waiting for property taxes. And if I've missed anything, Nelson, go ahead.
That's correct. This account has been around $12 million for the past several years. If you ask me, is that enough? I'd say no, it should be a little higher. But its goal is to keep the general fund in a cash positive manner during the first few months of each fiscal year until we receive the bulk of our property tax money.
Okay. And I don't disagree with that policy. I think I would agree with you, Nelson. I think it maybe should be larger. What then is the designated for new budget year $19.6 million figure? So every year, as an outsider or as a citizen of Bakersfield, I am astonished at the County of Kern and how they always end up finding 30 or 40 or some combination of that $1 million at the end of the year, and then a crisis ends up being averted. How is it that we're off by, or I don't know if we're off, but how do we get $19.6 million at the end of a year for the next budget year? Is that a carryover from reflect? What's that? How do we get that number?
Councilmember Rivera, we're amazed when the county finds $40 million too. I've told our staff that I wouldn't discipline them if they found it, but we have a closer and more frequent tracking system than the county does, a more accurate methodology of predicting. We monitor the budgets monthly. The departments monitor their expenses and revenues monthly. We budget conservatively, both on the revenue and the expense side. Conservatively means that we always have revenues that exceed our projections, and we always have expenses that are below our projections. We could, for example, anticipate vacancies in police officer positions based upon past trends, retirements, vacancies that occur, and budget a lower amount than the full salary complement. But that's risky because you never know for sure how many people are going to retire. You never know for sure how many people are going to separate. So we budget the full 12 months at full complement. But that never happens. So there's always some savings on the expense side, and there's always some revenue in excess of our projections, again, because we budget conservatively on the revenue side. We depend upon that revenue and the savings from the fiscal year as a primary revenue source for the upcoming budget. And one of the problems that Nelson is tactfully showing you, he has a more dramatic version if you want to see it, is that as that general fund balance is shrinking, it creates a greater need for more actions the next year. As we go from 19 million this year to 15 million next year, that's $4 million we have to overcome in some other way. We're overcoming it in part with very tight budgets and some staffing reductions and so on. But we do track it every month. The departments project their expenses every month. Our new salary projection file tracks and projects through current vacancies through the end of the year quite effectively. So it's both, it was historically was kind of a manual system. Now it's fairly automated. I guess that would be fair to say, Nelson, right?
Yes.
You're looking quizzical.
Yeah, for a few reasons. One, if we know if we expect there's some type of unspent general fund money, and I'm assuming, so let's take 2015 as an example. I'm looking at $19.6 million. I think it'd be safe to assume that maybe perhaps at the middle of that year, you might reasonably split that in half, or give or take, I don't know how much. If that money is there, why did we take the actions we took then in January at the mid-year, at the middle of the fiscal year, to adjust the budget based on sales tax drop, based on a sales tax drop? If there was in fact potentially quite a bit of carryover money here.
Councilmember Rivera, just as we track changes in property tax revenues, changes in projected sales tax revenues, changes in building permit fee revenues, we track the fund balance and the likely amount of the carryover in the general fund. If we would have spent the $19.6 million, we would be cutting $14 million more out of next year's budget than we currently are. It is, while the amount varies from year to year, it is a predictable, trackable revenue which we rely upon and infuse into the upcoming budget year as a revenue source.
Okay. I guess in the future, given not every year results in lower sales tax or lower property tax values, that something like this actually be an option. And I understand if there's a policy to carry over money, but it also sounds like then there is the likelihood that when sales tax and property tax are up, you might be able to replenish these funds. And it seems to me anything that sits aside should be on the table whenever we're having conversations about cuts to departments or cuts to staffing or freezes on staffing or anything else. And this is helpful for me to know now, because I'll be honest, if and when we come to the mid-year budget review in January again, and we're potentially looking at those types of actions, I believe whatever carryover at that time might be realized should be on the table, or whatever unspent revenue should be on the table. I guess that'd be my point here. I'm curious though, would it be possible, sorry Nelson, and to your staff, and it's not something that needs to happen very quickly, but for my own I think for everyone's edification purposes, I would be very curious to see how other cities do this. So I hear often that other cities have reserve accounts. They call it a reserve account. And it sounds like we have something similar in this cash basis reserve based on council policy. I understand other local governments likely have, something similar that a council or a board has directed them to create. But I'm curious how they manage every other component. And I know that not every other city budgets as conservatively as we do, and I think we're in better shape as a result. But I'd be curious to know how maybe the closest 4 or 5 other cities to us actually do it. I'd be curious to see how Fresno does it. I'd be curious to see how Riverside does it. So if that's something you could work on maybe over the summer, I would really enjoy or would appreciate getting that information. And then if we hadn't had this presentation, because this is something we requested, right? This is the budget kind of 101 as we called it. Okay.
Yes.
I'd like to get this every year because for me, it's not simply just a budget 101. It's quite revealing on kind of the health and the status of our general fund. I'd specifically like to be able to get that information more often, if that can be conveyed to us somehow.
Sure. I feel that I have somehow been deficient in explaining to you why it would be imprudent to use any projected fund balance at mid-year. Nelson, or maybe Chris?
Well, let me try something. So next year, we're proposing to use 15 million of that $33 million to balance the budget. In other words, our revenues or our expenses are going to exceed our revenues by about $15 million next year. So we hope that we don't have to spend that money, but we've budgeted it in so we don't have to delete positions and, that kind of thing. So I don't know if that helps at all.
Well, no, I understand it, and I get that we can pull from it, like you say we're doing, but then it also seems like we could also repay it back in better years, which seems to me to really meet for what might be a reserve account or whatever we want to call it. It meets that purpose. So if in one year we can take $15 million, then why can't we in another year begin repaying that back when sales tax and property tax are better? I mean, the carryover or this $15.5 million we're talking about seems like, I don't recall that conversation at the council, so I understand that that's part of the budget you'll be bringing to us. But if we could do $15.5 million, then I'm unsure of why, when we're talking about smaller amounts of money that potentially, and this is a worst case scenario, but if and when we have a worst case scenario that actually means real cuts, that if we took $15.5 million, I'm unsure why we couldn't take $1 or $2 million more and then set a policy that it be repaid.
Councilmember Rivera, we could bring back Nelson with another presentation with more detail. Let me tell you, however, what the concept you're talking about, we do. We track, and this is kind of the second to third less than optimal fiscal year. And so we've done some things that are one-time in nature in order to be able to present a balanced budget. And for instance, canceling capital outlay projects to return money to the general fund is a one-time action. Actually, that's how some of this projected $15 million, why it's there, is because council actions at mid-year and then more recently resulted in canceling capital projects in order to restore the general fund balance. Well, that's a one-time action, and we have taken a number of one-time actions knowing that that can't happen again. And if the economy doesn't get better, deeper cuts into the operating budget will be needed in the future. But the first course of action we would take as time gets better is to back out all those one-time actions, to make the actual revenues and expenditures balance without one-time actions, if you will. If it gets better than that, and we're able to take out all those one-time actions, we would be able to add personnel, to be able to add expenses, respond to constituent demands for enhancement of general fund services, which is the position we would like to be back into as soon as possible. But in any event, if you'd like some more detail on that, when Nelson can come back, it's not on the agenda for, I guess the 29th would be as soon as we could agendize it, but we'd be happy to do that if you'd like.
I'm not going to assume that my colleagues actually care about my questions. They may, I'm not sure, but maybe it's something you can just simply provide to us in a memo. However, to the point that, so as you're indicating here, a lot of this money is the result of one-time actions. I'm getting the impression, though, that there is a carryover or an unspent general fund balance at the end of every year. So tell me over the last 10 years out, and not now, but whenever we do have that, whenever we can get that information, what at the end of every year for the last 10 years have we carried over? If it has in fact been one-time actions, I'm assuming that it wouldn't be similar in nature with respect to the amount of money every single year for the last 10 years. And I would think that that information would reflect that. So I'd be curious to get that information as well. That's all I have. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Hanson, please.
Thank you, Mayor Hall. Willie, I care about your questions. Okay. And I just have a couple of comments. The reserve is critical, obviously. I want to thank Nelson and whoever else put this thing together as far as the fund accounting. Very interesting. And I know we're not running a democracy, but my question would be, Ellen, would you start moving funds from one area to another, the areas that you can? I mean, I realize that we're restricted in many cases where we could use monies that are designated from one area you can't transfer. But in a case where you may take something in the public works area from roads to whatever, do you have a discussion with the department heads on that, or is that something that's just kind of arbitrary?
Councilmember Hanson, actually, the discretion we have is pretty small. By law, the enterprise funds that Nelson went through, water, sewer sanitation, you have to track and account for those funds individually, and you can't transfer them into other uses. Actually, state law in the last few years has been expanded to include permit fees and related. You can't make a profit on them. So the building permit division cannot make a profit. If they were going to make a profit that would be long-term in nature, we would have to actually lower our permit fees so that we didn't make a profit. Many of our revenue sources are restricted by law as to its source. Gas tax has a constrained set of uses under state law, and while there may be 3 categories you can plug it into, it all has to go into roads. So actual discretion really comes down to those better years when there's been some one-time revenue and we're able to pick up some capital outlay activities. So, Nelson, you want to add?
Sure, Mayor Hall, Councilmember, Vice Mayor Hanson, we did take some of those actions recently back in, I think, January. As Mr. Tandy said, we canceled some capital projects or reduced the funding of capital projects, moved that money back into the general fund. If these trends continue, we could consider that further to the extent that there were projects available that had not started yet.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about the legality or all the other business. I understand what you're saying. I guess my question would be, and coming from the private sector, there are times in business that you have to cut back, just like we do in the city. And it comes from a particular area that may be affected more than the other area. How do you balance that as far as keeping your staff, management, I say management meaning your department heads, with that understanding? Is there a good communication as far as where they recognize and buy in as far as the decision-making process is concerned?
Councilmember Hanson?
Are they allowed to do that, or is there an open discussion?
Yeah, again, within the small confines of what is really flexible. I mean, it wouldn't have an open discussion to Steel Arch and all those water revenue to use in the general fund wouldn't be open because it's illegal. And so we would never have that kind of a roundtable discussion. To discuss what our priorities are in a year when there is some surplus money and some availability of money for capital outlays, and whether that should be a Parks and Rec project or a police project or something, yes, there's open discussion, and there's good cooperation from the departments. Each submits a list in prioritized order, and there is comparison and dialogue that takes place to review how item number 3 on the Parks and Recreation list compares to item number 4 on the Public Works list. Am I getting to the question?
Okay, well, I know everyone's not going to be happy, no one ever is in those conditions. I just, final comment, and I don't disagree with Mr. Rivera's comment or a question regarding some other cities, their operation, but I really don't care about the other cities, the way they do their accounting, and whether they spend a lot of money and they don't spend a lot of money. The hard facts are that San Bernardino, Stockton, I think even Fresno was in financial straits a while back, but Bakersfield continues to, thanks to the 7 people up here and city manager and great department heads and all our employees, that we continue to do a good job, and we're going through the budget presentations now, and we'll make decisions in the next few weeks to approve the budget for the year 2015-16. So I'm all in favor of having a reserve account. We have always had a reserve account, and we're very proactive, so I want to thank you for that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Councilmember Maxwell, please.
Thank you, Mayor Hall. In Vice Mayor Hansen's question, it occurred to me what I wouldn't mind knowing, and along with some of the things that Councilmember Rivera has pointed out and asked questions about, because I would like to know the answers to his question also, is once we have put something into a fund, say we've taken something out of the Transportation Development Fund and put it into specifically a fund, which ones can we then say we're having a tight year and we want to bring some of those funds back, because if we spend them on different things, it will relieve some of the pressure on our general fund. So I'd like to know which ones can we, after it's gone into one fund, can we bring it back into the same fund that it was in? So you straight on my question?
Yes.
Very good, thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith, for your budget presentation today. Madam Clerk, please call the next budget presentation.
Under Department Budget Presentations, we have Water Resources.
Mr. Chianello, please.
Well, good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. It's a pleasure to be here again to present the Water Resources Department's budget for fiscal year 16-17. And with me and who put a lot of work into preparing this budget is Jason Metters, our Water Resources Director, and Joe Navarro, our Business Manager. So with that, we'll begin discussing our proposed budget for the Water Department. We'll start off with the organization chart, where it shows that we have two divisions, and therefore we have two budgets that we manage. The first one is the Agricultural Division, which is responsible for the daily operations of the Kern River and various canals, 7 days a week, 365 days per year. We also manage the city's Kern River water rights for the benefit of all the current and future citizens of Bakersfield. This division also maintains the central record-keeping function on the Kern River, and we disperse that information annually for all Kern River interests, including the Water Master. On our Domestic Water Division, we have a small complement of employees which oversees a domestic water system with currently slightly over 44,000 metered water connections. Some of our accomplishments in this current fiscal year, we've actually worked closely with Recreation and Parks Department for our water use efficiency grant, and Parks was able to do a lot of water efficient projects in the parks with that grant money, and that's also enabled us to use that money for outreach and water conservation and water conservation kits that we give away for free, high efficiency water sprinkler nozzles, and some of the things we'll be talking about a few slides down. We've initiated design and construction of some emergency wellhead treatment and water supply projects. That project will be installing these wellhead treatment filter systems at 5 different wells over the next few months during the summer to give us some extra redundancy in our water supply. We work closely with the county on our joint NPDES permit under our stormwater management plan, and also annually we continue to replace leaking service water lines from the water main up to the person's private property. We also do some maintenance on the Kern River Canal owned by the city. We've replaced approximately 125 concrete panels. We've worked very closely with our PG&E rate representative, along with Public Works was involved in those meetings, and that helped us realize a savings of approximately $300,000 in electrical costs. We've done some underground piping improvements along Jenkins Road and Brimhall Road and Allen Road intersection. And a very important and big project that's just starting, it's going to be ongoing for many years, is working very closely with the city manager's office and the city attorney's office and the water board. We were able to partner with Improvement District Number 4 from Kern County Water Agency and Kern Delta Water District, and we completed and submitted our application to Department of Water Resources to hopefully become a groundwater sustainability agency within the next few months. But that work is ongoing. As far as water conservation goes, cumulatively in our domestic service area, we've seen a reduction of negative 25.7%, and that is cumulative from June 15 through April of 2016. On the subject as well of water conservation, the revised water conservation regulations were adopted by the State Water Board on May 18th. These regulations have been, what's been adopted is asking all urban purveyors to extend water conservation at least out through January of 2017. The big difference is instead of a mandated water conservation target, we'll be able to analyze our demands and our supplies and self-certify a new water conservation target, and we're currently looking at that right now. And I plan on giving further details on those water conservation regulations and self-certification of a water conservation target at the next council meeting on June 8th under reports. Also on water conservation, with the city's application called City Sourced, we've received over 1,400 notifications for potential water waste, and we've continued to do our outreach and working with the residents, whether we get that information by phone or by application, to go out and educate and advise the people on use of proper water use. We're also partnering with other local water purveyors within the urban area, and also the Water Association of Kern County. And currently, there's some commercial ads on the radio that they're about 20 seconds commercial spots that continues to talk about water conservation. We have this ongoing conservation efforts that we can continue that's funded by our grant. To date, we've issued 150 high-efficiency toilets rebates, up to $150 rebate. There were 117 rebates given out for high-efficiency clothes washers, and also on smart irrigation controllers, up to $125 rebate. 30 of those were issued. In terms of the free conservation kits which are available, whether you're in the city's domestic service area or Cal Water's domestic service area, we've issued 381 of those kits. Includes 2 high-efficiency shower head, 1 shut-off hose nozzle, and some faucet aerators. And in terms of the high-efficiency sprinkler nozzles, 6,033 sprinkler nozzles were issued to both residential homes and also larger commercial accounts as well. They had an interest in installing high-efficiency sprinkler nozzles. And also, finally, in our CIP projects of what we've accomplished here in our current fiscal year, on your left, you'll see those blue tanks that are being installed at our domestic water well near Jewetta, right off of Jewetta, north of the West Side Parkway. And there's filter media, and it helps remove, in this case, we had some naturally occurring arsenic levels that were a little too high, and so we were able to install these tanks that are doing a good job of removing the arsenic. And that particular project is completed right now. And then on the right is just some photos of our mainline extensions. By the way, on that last water well that we showed you, it was actually offline since 2009. And so with the drought and the need to look for water supplies for redundancy, that was really the reason to get this well back online. And it's really a strategic well to get back online as well in terms of its location and the fact that it has an emergency generator there in case there's ever a power outage. We could continue to run this particular well under an emergency generator. So it was a good location to have this treatment installed. Here's an overall budget summary of the department. You'll see the first division, the agricultural water division, is up on top. It's pretty much a flat budget overall. There's a small decline of 2.7%. And on the domestic water side, there is also a proposed decrease of -4% for an overall department reduction of around 3.8%. In our budget, the largest decreases is the reduction in request for capital improvement money. The reason why we can do this is because on previous budgets that were approved, council approved money that we still have encumbered for some of our capital improvement projects that were either currently in work or we plan on rolling those projects out in the upcoming fiscal year. So we're in a position where we could use some previously approved money for capital improvement projects for our upcoming 16-17 fiscal year. And our staff is maintained at 28 full-time employees, and it's been flat for the last 5 years, and also proposed for the upcoming fiscal year 28 employees as well. Just a pie chart of our agricultural water division, the expenditures of about $4.6 million. We have operation and maintenance accounts for about 61%. This includes maintenance of all the river control structures, the city-owned canals, and operation of the Kern River. Outside services includes funding to pay for annual contracts for repairs, such as concrete repair within the canals, earthwork to assist in river repairs, and sump maintenance. And then there's the interfund charges, which pays for 3 parkway maintainers and to help us with weed control spraying on over 330 stormwater sumps within the city. This slide here is our ag water revenues, projected to be about $3.8 million. The bulk of this includes $2.5 million from water sales that's destined for the drinking water treatment plants that serves city residents. We have a spreading facility income, which includes revenues generated from the various fees that we have in place associated with the city's 2,800-acre recharge facility. A component of miscellaneous revenue, which is actually a combination of various sub-accounts, some of which are revenue from districts using the city's ag facilities, such as pumps in the 2,800-acre recharge area. It also includes income from leasing Isabella storage space and also water transportation fees. And then cost recoveries is other districts which reimburse the city for operation and maintenance through jointly owned canals, and we invoice them through what we call our clearing accounts. In our domestic water division, proposed expenditures of about $23.3 million, $23.4 million. About 80% of that consists of 4 major categories. The first one is approximately $7 million for our operation and maintenance contract with Cal Water, which operates and maintains daily our domestic water system. We have power costs for operation of approximately 55 domestic water wells that are online at about $4.5 million. 3 is a water supply programs for $3.5 million, which includes O&M costs for the treated water capacity that we have at the Kern County Water Agency drinking water treatment plant called the Henry C. Garnett Plant. O&M costs for treated water from Cal Water's Northwest Treatment Plant, and also the percolation program we have with Kern Delta as water goes through their earthen line canals and recharges within city limits. And then we have operations at $3.7 million for legal fees, various repairs and maintenance under annual contracts, such as for service line replacements and for our well drilling contractors. This slide here is our estimated revenues for our domestic water system of about $22.5 million. Residential and commercial metered water sales accounts for about $15 million and $3.2 million respectively, or about 81% of our projected revenue. The public agencies account our water sales, which includes parks and school districts, and accounts for approximately $1.4 million. Our city's domestic system, which the city acquired, known at that time as the Ash Water System, back in 1977, shows the city population back there at 82,000 people approximately, and the amount that we served within the city, which was about 11,900 people. Projected at the end of fiscal year 2017, the city's population will be over 369,000 people. We anticipate serving over 146,000 people, or roughly 40% of the city's population. And speaking about our domestic service area, it is the blue area on the west side of the city, and this map also shows some other local water purveyors within urban Bakersfield. The city service area is in dark blue and bounded by Stein Road on the east, Snow Road on the north, Interstate 5 to the west, and Taft Highway on the south. We are proposing a rate increase for the upcoming fiscal year of 3.5% on all of our fees. This will help meet the costs of new water supply programs, meet water quality standards, and fund capital costs. Our last rate increase on the quantity of water or the commodity rate, was October 1st, 2010. And then our monthly readiness to serve fee, or what we call our meter fee, was last increased October 1st of 2006. So assuming every household could use about 2,800 cubic feet of water per month, this would bring the proposed average water bill to the citizens of Bakersfield in our domestic service area of about $36.20 per month. And just a slide showing here some other local urban water purveyors and how we compare with others. And we tried to keep the comparisons the same. We're looking at 2,800 cubic feet for all homes, as well as a specific meter size of 3/4 of an inch, which would help us get our comparisons as close as possible. And then also with other similar cities, and when I say similar cities, I mean we were looking at similar domestic water systems throughout California in terms of, single pressure zones or maybe number of metered connections. And so we came up with this list of cities, and you could see how we compare with others. I will say, for example, Oxnard, by doing some research on Oxnard, a large part of their budget is actually to purchase raw water as a supply, and then they treat it for their citizens. So a large part of their budget is for actually purchase of water, whereas the city's purchased a great deal of our water. We still do it annually, but we've purchased a great deal of it under our water rights back in 1976. Just a few capital improvement projects that we are proposing in our domestic water system is to continue with replacing leaky service connections between the water main and the person's meter at their property, and also to continue with wellhead facility upgrades, which could be installing new motors or a new pump, or possibly lowering the pump if that's required as well. So with that, that's our budget presentation, and we'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Hanson, please.
Thank you, Mayor Hall. Arthur, great presentation. Thank you. It's really pleasing that Councilmember Smith and Maxwell and myself serve on a water board, and I don't know how often we could say in government, 5 years, that we have the same number of employees that we have today that we had 5 years ago. Look at the federal government, the state government, the county government, et cetera, et cetera. It ain't happening. So great job. A couple questions. Utility costs are projected to be $4-point-something million. What are we doing to look at the future 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Because everyone knows that those costs are just going to accelerate in the coming years. Is there anything we could do to combat that?
Honorable Mayor and Vice Mayor Hanson, in terms of utility costs at $4.5 million, that's like our electrical costs, and everyone knows that electrical costs will probably continue to rise. So what we're doing there also is we actually have a study right now that we're doing on areas of potential offsetting those electrical costs with solar energy where it makes sense. In some of the areas, we just don't have enough property to have enough solar panels to generate electricity. But in some areas, like the back of our office, or maybe at some areas where we have storage tanks, it actually may make sense. And so we're looking at that study right now, and Joe, as our business manager, is reaching out to some companies to see the viability of that. So we're looking at that for the future.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's going to be, it could be a crisis coming up. I should know the answer to this, but I don't. What's a pump tax?
The pump tax is a tax that we pay to Kern County Water Agency. It's all of our pumps within Zone of Benefit 7, which is about 75% within the city, specifically, about 75% within the city is contained within this Zone of Benefit 7 boundary. happens to be the same borders right now as Improvement District Number 4's boundary. And as our domestic water wells are, not all of them, but most of them are within that boundary, we pay an assessment tax so they can go about their business and what they do on the state water project.
Okay, thank you. I'm surprised at something that these numbers, excuse me, and I can't see very well, the lighting up here is very good, but on the, on some of those programs that we had on the toilets, high efficiency washers, the numbers are modest. And I say that only because I'm on the San Joaquin Valley Air Board, that district, and when we have these programs, there's a huge number of people that take advantage of these things. Is there any particular reason why these numbers are in the modest area? Is it marketing, or just people aren't interested? Or do you know? And if you don't, it's okay.
Honorable Mayor and Vice Mayor Hansen, I don't believe it's just marketing. We've tended to have reported frequently on this at the Water Board, and I know the news has picked up on it, and I've been on radio also talking about this. It's also on the city's drought website and in various parts of the city's website, and so I don't know why more people maybe aren't taking advantage of it, but that's about the best answer I could give right now. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. And then just one last comment, and I'm sympathetic to my colleagues that when I look at the, I happen to live in a blue area, and that's my ward, but what can I say, guys? Arthur, again, thank you very much. Congratulations to you and the 27 people you work with.
Thank you.
Councilmember Maxwell, please.
Thank you very much, Mayor Hall. Hey, Art, I like what the Vice Mayor has to say about the possibility of reducing our electric costs, especially since we have 2,800 acres that we could possibly put an awful lot of solar panels on. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering what currently is our balance, because these are proprietary funds. What's currently in our agricultural water and domestic water funds? Do you know?
Are you, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Maxwell, are you referring to our fund balance?
Yes.
We have that with us. It'll just take a quick.
Good. Art, while you're standing there, I know that you said that a lot of our electrical costs are tied up in the pumping aspects of what we do. So that would be primarily the pumping that we do on that 2,800 acres?
Well, we have actually throughout our whole system, that $4.5 million for electrical costs is for all, at any one time, we could have about 55 domestic water wells pumping, plus we have booster pumps that boost the water pressure from our storage tanks into the system. And so it's actually just a small amount is within the 2,000 acres. Our great deal of our electrical costs is just dispersed throughout our whole system.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so for the Ag Water Fund balance, right here. Okay, our projected fund balance, ending fund balance, is about $5.4 million.
Okay.
And our domestic water fund projected ending fund balance is about $26.1 million.
Thank you very much, Art. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Councilmember Parlier, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. Well, I'm not on the water board, Art, so if you would indulge me, please. Can you explain to me if Cal Water has any responsibilities in the city areas with O&M or other things with water operations and maintenance?
They're under, Honorable Mayor and Councilmember Parlier, Cal Water, if I understand your question correctly, is under an operation and maintenance agreement for the city's domestic water system. Mm-hmm. And so not only do they maintain their system, but they also send crews over to run our system daily. So that's the approximate $7 million projected that we were going to pay them in this upcoming fiscal year. It's for those operation and maintenance duties.
Okay. And that helps keeping our employees at a certain level then, too, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that helps out, because if the system was to grow a little bit, if they need a new pumper or another meter reader, that would be on that contract. It would not be within our office specifically.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Mr. Chinello, thank you very much for your presentation. Madam Clerk, please call the next budget presentation, please.
Public Works.
Mr. Fiddler, please.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and Council members. Nick Fiddler, Public Works Director. Today I have the pleasure of presenting the Public Works Fiscal Year 2016-17 Operating and Capital Improvement Budget. As you can see from the organizational chart, there hasn't been any change since the previous year. Public Works has 11 divisions associated to it and maintains the Bakersfield Municipal Airport. As shown in the attached chart, you can see that we've decreased by 5 positions, and also in 15-16 you can see a reduction of several positions due to the transfer of the IT department to, the telecommunications department to IT. So that was the result of the previous year reduction. As proposed rate increases, we do propose 2 rate increases, one for refuse rates. We're proposing a 3% increase, mainly due to 3.1% haulers contract. There was an increase in that. The rates for refuse will go from $190 to $195 annually. Again, we're proposing a sewer rate increase of 2.4%, and that will take it from currently $210 to $215 annually. As shown in the attached budget, this is the operating budget by all funds. You can see a 1% reduction in personnel. This is primarily due to the reduction of staff. And operating, you can see a 1.1% increase, and this is primarily due to the increase in enterprise funds, that's solid waste, refuse, and wastewater. Capital outlay reduction of 5.3% is mainly due to reduction in fleet replacement equipment. The operating budget by funding source, general fund, you see a reduction of 2.7%. Again, that is mainly due to the reduction of 4 personnel. In development services, you see a reduction of 7.2%. That is a reduction of 1 construction inspector that was provided through the Development Services Fund. The TRIP local match, you see a 6.5% increase. This is due to a $50,000 increase in a new mandatory KitFox training program for completed projects. We have to go out and monitor the KitFox's activities within the projects that were completed. Again, enterprise fund, you see a 2.0% increase, mainly due to the hauler's contract for refuse, and then also increases for electrical services and various regulatory agency requirements. Equipment management fund, you see a 0.9% reduction. We reduced the amount of fleet equipment that will be replaced this year. And then an increase of 3.8% for the Amtrak station, which is fully refunded through the public transit funds. Local roadway and right-of-way improvements. You can see we have a total of $30 million that are being dedicated to various maintenance and right-of-way improvements. the general fund of $14 million, capital outlay. This is mainly composed of $5 million for our streets division, and then $1.108 million is the local match for the MAP 21 federal fund. And speaking of MAP 21 federal fund, that is comprised of RSTP and CMAQ. That's our resurfacing and maintenance programs, and a lot of our traffic signal and traffic signal interconnect programs. CDBG is our standard curb, gutter, and sidewalk improvements, along with pavement as well. And then Transportation Development Fund, there are some miscellaneous widening projects throughout the city. As you can see in this slide is operating budget summary. To give you a representative of what 37.5% indicates is $41 million for our solid waste division. The equipment fund is 20%, second largest, which is $22 million, and the streets is 15.7%, which represents about $17 million. One of our major accomplishments in administration is on October 12, 2015, our Public Works became the 104th agency to become accredited by the APWA. This has been a huge benefit to our department in creating consistency and also helping create standard documentation of standard operating procedures. TRIP accomplishments, the construction of State Route 178 and Morning Drive interchange, which was opened in August of 2015, and the State Route 99 and Hosking Avenue interchange opened in March 2016. We have several projects that are currently in construction: Rosedale Highway widening, 178 widening, the Beltway operational improvements, and State Route 99 auxiliary lane at Rosedale Highway. Continuing on with TRIP accomplishments, the Centennial Corridor, we've made a lot of progress in the recent months. We've completed the FEIR. We're at a design 65% complete, and we've awarded 4 phases of demolition of acquired properties. Our next big first phase of the Centennial Corridor will be the Kern River bridges. Our TRIP action plan is to continue projects currently under construction and advance the remaining TRIP projects listed below. Engineering accomplishments, CIP projects completed. You can see there was several ADA improvements listed. The Bright House Networks amphitheater seating. The picture in the lower right corner is the first opening act since we did a lot of the remodel at the Bright House Networks amphitheater. This was for the Leonard Skinner concert. You can see that it was very well attended, and this project here had a lot of help from various divisions you'll see throughout the presentation, and also the assistance of Recreation and Parks. This was a true team effort to make several improvements at the Park at Riverwalk, mainly focused around the Bright House Amphitheater. And then also, again, the Centennial Plaza fountain was a combination of several divisions and Recreation and Parks. Engineering accomplishments continued. Fire Station number 8, a remodel. This project is ongoing right now. We have prepared a temporary fire station while the remodel is taking place, and expect the remodel to be complete later this year. There are pavement rehabilitation on Gosford Road from White Lane to Ming Avenue. Accomplishments continued. Street improvements at the 3 locations identified below, and sewer improvements also identified. Street lights improvements, Chester Avenue from El Serrano to Bell Terrace, and P Street from Ming Avenue to Bell Terrace. We installed pedestrian countdown timers at 60 signalized intersections, and new traffic signal synchronization and communication projects installed along Callaway Drive, H Street, Stein Road, and White Lane. SCADA system upgrade. This project has been very beneficial. We're in the final stages of the installation, but have already realized significant improvements from the upgrade. We are able to really monitor our lift station, our sewer and storm drain lift stations, providing us real-time activity We're able to identify potential failures before they actually happen, and we can also track the electrical usage of each one of those stations. There has been traffic signal and synchronization on Snow Road and Jewetta Avenue and Snow Road at Norris Road. We've done multiple improvements to Sports Village Phase 3, and you'll see later this week on Wednesday an update on our pavement management system. Street improvements, several street improvements listed below, and several pavement rehabilitation projects listed. Engineering's fiscal year 16-17 action plan, continue to advance the city's CIP plan, deliver capital improvement projects in a timely manner, continue submitting applications for federal, state, and funding and grants. You can see there's a list of various grants that we always are applying for. Continue to incorporate ADA transition plan and complete streets policy into projects, and continue to improve service to development community. General services accomplishments. We removed graffiti from over 10,600 sites, striped over 1,000 miles of city streets, and over 2,200 signs replaced, installed, and maintained, and responded to over 2,700 street light service requests. Again, accomplishments for general services, the Bright House Networks Amphitheater. They performed a lot of the work on site with our own crews. We remodeled the main office of the Bakersfield Condors and Bakersfield Municipal Airport Northeast Hangar Taxi Lane Rehab. Continuing along with fiscal year 16-17 action plan for general services, review and pursue energy efficiency projects for city facilities, continue to install energy efficient LED lighting for street lights and facilities, and continue to complete ADA improvements for city facilities. For streets accomplishments, resurfaced, reconstructed 79 lane miles of city streets, sealed 343 street miles with surface penetration sealer, began implementing update pavement management system. Again, you will see this later this week on Wednesday night. That system has been very beneficial already. We're glad we're working towards that, but again, you'll see a presentation on that Wednesday. Installing SCADA systems on all city sewer and storm lift stations, constructed new curb gutter and sidewalks in CDBG eligible areas, constructed parking lot at Mesa Marin Sports Complex, constructed parking lot and installed sidewalk, sewer, and storm lanes at Sports Village Sports Complex. And if many of you haven't been out to the Centennial Plaza, the work turned out beautiful there. The staff installed the stamped concrete, tiles, bricks at the plaza. Streets Vision Action Plan continue to preserve and maintain city streets, fully utilize the pavement management system, continue work in CDBG areas with new funding, continue to work on retrofitting existing sewer and storm lift stations, and continue video inspection of sewer main lines for maintenance and repair. The video inspection has played a key role in a lot of our sewer lines. We've been able to identify some potential failures before they actually happen, so we've really been ramping up on videoing our new lines. We did get a new vehicle a year and a half ago that's been proven very effective. Moving into equipment accomplishments, continue the city's commitment to safety, developed and implemented best safety practices to remain in OSHA or in compliance with OSHA for confined space, fall protection, etc. Equipment fiscal year 16-17 action plan, continue to convert more of the city's fleet to clean air vehicles. 79 LNG and CNG vehicles in city fleet as of December 2015, and 539,000 gallons of LNG and 61,000 gallons of CNG in calendar year 2015. This represents 38% of the fuel used by the city's forces. Wastewater accomplishments: produced 228 million gallons of tertiary treated water, created emergency action plan for Plant 2 storage reservoirs, and produced 2.2 million kilowatt hours of electricity with Plant 3 solar panels. We are looking to increase our tertiary treated water. We've been going through some preliminary design engineering and options to potentially expand that facility. Wastewater fiscal year 16-17 action plan to continue to explore possible tertiary water treatment expansion at Plant 3, and then rehabilitate grit chamber and trickling filter recirculation pumps at Plant 2. Solid waste accomplishments: successful anti-litter efforts, completed more than 450 cleanups. There were more than 9,000 volunteers, and we produced 198,300 pounds of litter collected. First, I'd like to thank Mayor Hall for his 15 years of leadership to the Great American Cleanup, and I hope to see several more years of his leadership as we move forward. It was a very successful event held on April 23rd. We even had the president of the national Keep America Beautiful at our event. Solid waste accomplishments: increased business recycling. We have 3,800 businesses reached, 50 more food composting accounts, and 90 more recycling bins and carts. Solid waste fiscal year 16-17 action plan: continue anti-litter efforts, protect recycling program from market downturns. We've had some significant losses recently with the Covantis site, the biomass site out in Delano that has now down, so it's have us searching for alternate uses for our wood chips. Moving into the capital improvement program budget. Proposed CIP budget, Public Works, which includes the TRIP program, is roughly $50 million. Recreation and Parks is a little over $2 million, and Water Resources, as you just seen, is $1 million, for a total of $54 million. Street improvements, ADA improvements, pedestrian improvements, A Street between Brundage Lane and California Avenue, and street improvements at the 6 locations listed below. Street improvements continued, traffic signal and related improvements for the 3 following locations, and CDBG area for the following 2, and then our street resurfacing fund for street maintenance. This is work that is performed by our own crews. Street improvements, pavement rehabilitation at the following 2 locations, bike lane improvements at the following 2 locations, and then a new bridge preventative maintenance program. Sewer and storm drain improvements. You can see there's 5 locations listed below. Facility improvements. There's 3 improvements scheduled for the Bakersfield Municipal Airport, and then Martin Luther King Park lighting upgrade, and then 2 improvements to wastewater treatment plants. TRIP Capital Improvement Program, the Centennial Corridor right-of-way, Centennial Corridor future construction, and West Beltway right-of-way. That completes my presentation. For any questions.
Councilmember Parlier, please.
Thank you. Nick, I am always so impressed with your department's can-do attitude. I've never heard a no out of your department. I've heard a few, I'll check on that and get back to you, but never no. Again, I want to thank your staff. I saw the 10,600 graffiti removals, and I was trying to contemplate how many of those were my referrals on that. But again, thank you. Your department's doing a great job, and the city doesn't move without Public Works. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Maxwell, please.
Thank you, Mayor Hall. Nick, on the On the refuse rates, the fund balances for refuse, solid waste, and the sewer rates. What's our fund balance in each of those?
You know, I do not have those offhand. I can get those for you later.
Yeah, if you could before Wednesday night's meeting, that would be great. And then you, on one of your last ones, said that your public works includes TRIP is $50 million. Do you know about how much of that is TRIP?
I can find that for you right now. We have a lot of numbers in our division.
I'm sure you do. You've got a lot of different moving parts. Oh, is it in the book?
There's 28.4 million for the TRIP program.
So that's more than half. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Vice Mayor Hanson, please.
Thank you, Mayor Hall. Nick, just a comment. First of all, I agree with Councilmember Parlier, just an outstanding job. What's really frustrating is when we look at, I forget how many, 190,000 pounds or tons or whatever it was of garbage. I'm with Richard Bean. I just go crazy every time I'm walking down the street. I pick up trash, and people are so not good. Anyway, a suggestion, and this is just a thought, okay, not a command, but your department is very critical, as all departments are, and your Public Works, we got 22 pages of accomplishments, which is good, and I would like to continue to see that. But I would like maybe to expand a little bit in the future, not this year, but next year be thinking about when you get down to income, where you're spending money in various areas, TRIP, enterprise funds, equipment. Maybe just give us a little broader picture of that, because those are the things that we're going to be, the dollars we're going to be approving. And not that I question any of the numbers, but I would just like to have maybe a little better understanding, if that's okay.
Yeah, we can split it out by our fund, by department, our division.
Yeah, and I know that, I can call you at any time or stop in your office, but for the folks in Bakersfield that might be interested, I think it would be a good sign for us to do. Thank you.
Councilmember Sullivan, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Harold, talking about trash, just reminded me that last night, as I was leaving the Beal Park concert, which was wonderful and quite well attended, on the north end of Beal Park, as I was almost to my car, a young family was leaving the park and leaving a huge mess of their trash. And I said, would you please clean up your mess? Here you've enjoyed the park, clean up your mess. I was really surprised that they did it, And then I thanked them for their respectful attitude, but they were, I was just there at the perfect moment, and I mean, it was more than the normal amount of trash that people leave, but they did it. But it's just, my gosh, it's just an example of just the disrespect and poor training, I said, and just, now you're training your children to clean up the mess, to appreciate our parks. So that was interesting. Also, Nick, after I first got on the council over 20 years ago, I was invited into Raul Rojas actually invited me into one of the Public Works meetings. And for the first time, I saw a chart, a pie chart, showing just what Public Works, the number of, and it was probably actually two charts, per budget, per dollars of our city budget, but also for per employees. And that was a perfect way to demonstrate to a new council member just the huge responsibility that Public Works does have where our city is concerned. So of course, we see that pie chart quite often now. but that was something that was very impressive to me, and certainly we are all aware of just all that is under the Public Works umbrella. So you stepped into your position. We needed someone top-notch to hit the ground running, and you were the fellow for the job, and that's just what you did, Nick. So you have a huge department, huge amount of responsibility, but you do an excellent job, and certainly very noticeable to staff and council members, very appreciated. So anyway, and you're very nice to work with. When, I'm sure you get many telephone calls, well, you take them as quickly as possible, and you do have a can-do, but you take down the information and you get back to us very quickly. We try not to ask anything too unreasonable, but you take care of us, our inquiries and our requests very well. So that's very appreciated. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And I do have, every week on Thursday mornings, I have a division head meeting, and you're all welcome to attend at any time for a new or a refresher of what we do. It
is interesting. I really value that, and it was a way to give me a picture of just what the departments were all about. And at that time, it was just such a large part of the total pie, mainly employees and, of course, dollars. So that was very interesting. Thank you.
Councilmember Rivera, please.
Do you still have breakfast at those meetings?
We have donuts. Unless
Aw,
Marion
man.
Shaw if Marion Shaw is her day, then we get a big breakfast.
Okay, let me know when it's her day.
Unfortunately, she is retiring, so there went the breakfast.
Okay. When's your next meeting?
This Thursday. We have one
Okay.
almost every Thursday unless it gets canceled for some reason.
Okay, let's coordinate and I'll treat everybody to something.
Oh,
That'd be fun. Cool, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fiddler, for your presentation. Madam Clerk, please call the next budget presentation, please.
Community Development.
Mr. McIsaac, please.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. I am Doug McIsaac, your Community Development Director. It has been my pleasure now to be completing my 4th year serving you in that capacity, and to be here today to present you with our 2016-17 budget. And since this will be the last time I'll have the opportunity to do this for you, Mr. Mayor, I would like to personally thank you for all your years of dedicated service and for your always being supportive of our department. And not coincidentally, this will be the 5th year of the restructured Community Development Department, which was created by the merger of the former Development Services Department and the former Economic Development Community Development Department, which has now been absorbed into the Planning Division. So in our organizational structure here, Community Development Department continues to have 2 main divisions, the Planning Division, which also includes Economic Development, and the Building Division, which also includes Code Enforcement. This is our overall departmental budget for this coming year. If you look at the 3rd column down at the bottom of that, it shows our total budget for this coming year at $10,329,000, which you can see to the right represents an increase of about $252,000 or 2.5%. If you go back up to the top of that chart and breaking those numbers down a bit, our salaries and wages this year are about $7.2 million, which is actually a decrease of $189,000 or about 2.5%. And this is due primarily to the freezing of 2 vacated positions, one each in the planning and the building divisions. On the other hand, our operating budget for this year is at about $3.1 million, which is an increase of $441,000 or 16%. None of that increase involves increases to the general fund expenditures. To explain that a little bit, what that increase is represented by includes the fact that one of our HUD annual grants, the Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS, or HOPWA, at $384,000, is now being administered directly by the city and is therefore being included in our departmental budget for the first time this year. We've also had some incremental increases in our CDBG and home allocations, and for the first time this year, charges for department electricity use are being allocated to our budget, so the combination of those basically represent that increase. On the next line, our capital outlay remains constant at, well, zero. So nothing really there. And moving down to the source of funds, most notably is the fact that a portion of our budget from the general fund this year will actually decrease by about $145,000 to $3.3 million, again due primarily to positions being frozen. This slide shows our historical staffing levels. As you can easily see, between the height of the building boom around 2008 and bottoming out with the recession around 2012, staffing within the Community Development Department was reduced by 44% from 108 positions to 61 in 2012. Since the economy and development activity have begun to rebound since then, staffing has gradually increased again to 65 positions, but now with the current challenges to the general fund, staffing is being proposed to be reduced back down to 63 positions. I'd like to point out, though, as an indication of how efficiently the Community Development Department staff has been operating in recent years. One indication is that total building permits that were issued from 2011-12 until this year have increased 88%, while staffing between 2011 and this time has decreased by 13%. So I am very proud of just how hard and efficiently the staff of my department has worked to absorb the workload that they undertake and still continue to deliver quality services to our citizens. One other thing I'd like to note on this slide is that with the freezing of one position in the Planning Division this year, Planning will have its lowest staffing level at 23 positions in at least the 9 years reflected by this chart. And this will be during the upcoming year when Planning will be pursuing one of its most ambitious special project agendas in many years. As I mentioned, we are proposing to freeze 2 positions in this coming year, one in Planning and an Associate Planner 1, which is created by the resignation of a Principal Planner and the Chief Code Enforcement Officer who recently retired. I'm going to move now into specifically into the Planning Division. Planning Division is under the able leadership of Planning Director Jackie Kitchen, who is now in her 2nd year with the city. There are a total of 4 sections in the Planning Division. The first 3 shown here, current planning, advanced planning, permit and site planning, are all in the typical planning realm. And then we also have the 4th section being economic development. I am very happy to say that with this revised structure to merge economic development with planning is working quite well, as it allows for a more seamless integration of these functions that are, they're different, but are very much related to one another. With respect to the Planning Division's budget, the personnel budget shows a decrease of 3%, again, due primarily to the freezing of one position, while the operating budget shows an increase of almost $400,000 or 20%. Again, that's due to mostly the reasons I outlined a little bit ago regarding increases in HUD grant entitlements. So with that, then the overall planning budget shows an increase of about $325,000 or about 7.5%. Going into some of the special project accomplishments for this year, a good part of those involved the continuing work on high-speed rail related issues. As you know, high-speed rail is at least 9 years off from possibly becoming a reality. But if and when it does, high-speed rail will have a major impact on Bakersfield, both in terms of the opportunities that it will present to leverage having a major station here in downtown Bakersfield, and also trying to minimize the impacts that will be associated with the formidable infrastructure that goes along with the development of the system. So the work to achieve those objectives have already begun and will continue as progress moves forward with the program. This year, the Planning Division continued its work to facilitate change of the major portion of the high-speed rail's proposed alignment through Bakersfield from the originally adopted hybrid alignment to the less impactful LGA, or locally generated alignment. And as that name implies, the locally generated alignment was conceived by the Planning Division as a means to avoid the impacts to some of the major facilities such as the Rabobank Arena and the city courtyard. And the result led to the dismissal of the city's lawsuit with the High-Speed Rail Authority regarding the hybrid alignment. And as noted here on the first bullet, there was a very significant milestone in that goal that was achieved this last month when the High-Speed Rail Authority Board voted to adopt the LGA as its preliminary preferred alignment. Also this year, the earnest progress is being made on the development of a station area plan, which will be a conceptual land use plan to envision how downtown and the affected area around the proposed station at Golden State Avenue and F Street may develop in the future, and how to take advantage when high-speed rail does come to Bakersfield. And lastly, we have continued to monitor and provide input on other high-speed rail activities, most recently being our commenting on the 2016 high-speed rail business plan. Two other major undertaking this year were related to the city's general plan. One was the completion and adoption of the state-mandated update to the housing element, which was also certified by the State Department of Housing and Community Development. Also, the other was the initiation of progress to undertake a comprehensive update of the general plan as a whole, something that has not been done since 2002, and this will be a major multi-year undertaking. Other accomplishments this year was completion of a municipal service review and sphere of influence update, which was approved last month by the County LAFCO agency, and also following the resolution of the property tax split issues with the county, we begin processing annexations. A total of 8 annexations have already been completed, and there are currently 23 others that are in various stages of processing. Again, moving into some of the significant new development projects that were reviewed this year. Of course, one of those was the Gateway Retail Center in South Bakersfield off the newly completed Hosking Avenue Highway 99 interchange. When that is completed, it'll be a $100 million, 800,000 square foot project that will be a very attractive enhancement to South Bakersfield and provide desired community business or commercial businesses for both local and regional patrons. Another new shopping center that was approved was the Artisan Square at the northwest corner of Allen Road and Brimhall, which will include a grocery store anchor and a total of 125,000 square feet of commercial development. Continuing, there is approval of a new commercial center at the northeast corner of Coffee Road and Stockdale Highway, which will include, among other things, a new Hyatt hotel. And we also facilitated, in another vein, the reuse of existing commercial buildings, is here represented by conversion of a former Walgreens on White Lane and Acres Road to a new Harbor Freight tool store. With respect to multifamily residential, we are starting to see more residential projects in the downtown area, represented here by the 18th Street Lofts project and the 17th Street Townhomes project. And we also had 2 new large assisted living facilities that were approved this year. One, the Bakersfield Senior Village at Hageman and Knudsen, and the Maple Ridge project off of Alfred Harrell Highway. We are just now this month going to go live with implementing the use of the Novus Electronic Agenda Management System for the Planning Commission, as the City Council has done for a while now. We'll be continuing to take measures to maintain the Metropolitan Bakersfield Habitat Conservation Program, including participating in the trust agency, which administers the use of collected funds. And also, after we've had some recent complications with the state over the release of some grant funds, we will now again be moving forward with the development of a new Bakersfield Habitat Conservation Program, which we now anticipate being completed around the end of 2017. Moving into the coming year, we will continue to work on multiple fronts related to high-speed rail. We anticipate completion of the station area plan by spring of next year, followed thereafter by beginning to pursue the implementation steps and strategies that will be recommended as part of that plan, and also continue to be monitoring the other high-speed rail actions as we go along. One of the biggest and most ambitious undertakings, as I mentioned, we started this year, but we will be working on in earnest this coming year, is the update of the comprehensive update of the city's general plan. Another important project is, again, the preparation of the new Bakersfield Habitat Conservation Plan. It really is a very important plan that is needed to ensure that new development can be facilitated in an efficient and predictable manner. By having this plan in place, development projects only have to simply pay a known fee instead of having to seek their own permit from the state. So it is really helpful in that regard. Going to move now into the economic development area. And as far as accomplishments this year, of course, one of them that was significant was the adoption of the city's economic opportunity plan. The original adoption of the plan included the activation of 3 EOAs, and then recently the City Council took action to activate 3 other identified EOAs for a total of 6. And under that plan, the increment in the city's share of property tax in each EOA will accrue for use for economic development-related purposes in those areas. In the housing area, the sales of Phase 1 of the Creekview Villas condominium project were fully completed. We also completed this last year 2 other affordable housing projects in the Mill Creek area, the Mill Creek Courtyard Senior Residences and the Park 20th Apartments, which also includes units that are reserved for homeless veterans. In this coming year, we have already begun the process to solicit bids for construction of the next phase of 7 units for the Creekview Villas project, and I am pleased to say that completion of these units of the next phase will serve to completely fulfill the city's obligation to build affordable housing. That was a requirement of the city receiving an $11 million grant from the state that were used to construct many of the existing improvements in the Mill Creek area. Also this year, we will be moving forward with the development and implementation of the Mills Act Historic Preservation Program that offers partial property tax reductions for historic properties that qualify and wish to participate. We plan to continue further development of the Economic Opportunity Plan. Councilmember Rivera recently met with representatives of the Kern County Black Chamber of Commerce who are interested in establishing another EOA for the area generally between California Avenue and Brundage Lane, and staff will be bringing that forward fairly shortly for the council's consideration. And we will also continue to vigorously market the PQ property in the South Mill Creek area. Moving into our HUD resources, the council just recently approved our 2016-17 annual HUD action plan, but since that is a significant part of our budget, I'll recap it for you briefly here. This year, the city will be receiving slightly more than $5 million in HUD grant funds, with the largest portion of that being Community Development Block Grant Funds, or CDBG funds, at over $3.2 million. Here is a general breakdown of how those grant funds are proposed to be used, again with the majority of the CDBG funds shown here in blue that will be used for capital improvement projects such as street, curb, and sidewalk projects and park improvement projects. And here is a more detailed breakdown of those capital improvement projects, how they are proposed to be used in this coming year. Moving on to the building division. The building division continues to remain under the very capable management of Building Director Phil Burns and Assistant Building Director Mark Fick. Oops, now I did it. I think I'm the first one to make to mess up there. Here's the budget for the building division this year. It is a total of about $5.66 million, which represents a decrease of about 1.3% from the current year. Most of that, again, due to the freezing of the Chief Code Enforcement Officer's position. The operating budget does show an increase of about $45,000, and that is due mostly, again, to the shifting of electrical costs to the departmental budget this coming year. Building activity, as I mentioned earlier, even with the fact that the local economy has had a little bit of a downturn, total building permit activity continues to increase. From 2011 to this year just being completed, it's close to having almost doubled from just about 7,000 to a little over 13,000 total permits. We are seeing a little bit of a drop-off in single-family home construction, but it still continues to remain very strong at over 1,100 new single-family homes in this last fiscal year. Residential solar continues to climb. As you can see here from 2011, it has increased many fold to almost 5,000 permits this year we're just completing. Some of the accomplishments in the building division completed the remodeling of the first floor plant check area, continued to, in code enforcement, undertake encampment abatement policies along the in the Kern River bed area. Moving on this next year, we will be completing the remodel to the first floor conference room, and they will also be adopting every 3 years the state has new updates to the building code. There is one that will be going into effect January 1st of 2017, which requires a lot of work for the building division to update all their requirements and processes. Solar panel installation, like I said, continues to be very active and heavy. In plant check, the Artisan Square project, as I mentioned earlier, is in plant check, as well as reuse in Montgomery Wards on Golden State and F by Canyon Hills Assembly of God. And last, but certainly not least, is code enforcement. And these folks, in my humble opinion, they have one of the most challenging jobs in the city, and they do a fantastic job. And though only it's reflected by one slide here, it does show 8,557 total cases processed last year, and I can assure you there was a lot of hard work that went into processing and making sure our city continues to look the way we want it to. So with that, I would like to close by thanking my budget team, including Business Manager Melanie Dunwoody, Building Director Phil Burns, Planning Director Jackie Kitchen, and Community Development Coordinator Ryan Bland, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Maxwell, please.
Thank you, Mayor Hall. I just had a couple questions. The Creekview Villas, how many years did it take us?
It was a challenge. As you probably are aware, the city had to take the project back from the original developer because of bankruptcy issues that they had. So we have been doing that on our own. It is a challenge to sell these units because of the very narrow niche that you must have in terms of income qualification and credit worthiness, but we have succeeded in doing that. I think in building this next phase, we will have the benefit of being able to undertake pre-sales where we can be marketing the units as they're being constructed instead of, as we did this time, after they had already been there for some time.
So how many years? How many years?
It has probably been about a year and a half, I think, that we were engaged in selling.
I think Councilmember Maxwell's question goes back to
Right.
abolition and redevelopment, around 10.
Yeah, okay. Could I get a status report on 18th Street and B, the market rate apartments? Is there anything that, I have not seen any construction going on there at all. Is there anything that the city is standing in the way of?
No,
at this point?
the permits are ready to be issued. Is my understanding that the developer is trying to work out their financing, but the project is ready to go.
Last one. Chief Code Enforcement Officer. I personally have great faith in what happens in that division. And I know that I personally, and I have talked to Vice Mayor, I've talked to the other council members, and I know that we all lean on that division a lot. So I'd want to register my disapproval of freezing that chief code officer position. If there's something else we can do, some other position that we can freeze and not that one. I just know that, your last statement was these people do a phenomenal job. They respond to an awful lot of things. And it's what makes our city look nice. When I have people that are calling me on the phone because this is happening, that's happening, code enforcement is almost always involved. So I would not agree with that part of your budget. I'm sure my colleagues might want to chime in on it one way or the other, but I just don't think that's a good idea. Thank you.
Councilmember Parlier, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Doug, I just want to ask you, with code enforcement, to give us some historical context. You just have 2015. Next year, with the budget, could you just have it maybe going back 3 years so we can see how we're trending?
Sure.
Thank you.
Councilmember Sullivan, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, very good, very interesting, and very good presentation, Doug. Back on page 6, it quickly caught my ear about the annexations, and annexation 639, I'm not recognizing where that is. Would you give me a little bit of detail there, and then go in more to?
That is in Northwest Bakersfield, and it is going to be to accommodate a tentative tract subdivision that was approved by the Planning Commission last year. I'm not sure exactly where in the process that specific annexation is at, but
I see. Great, thank you. And so this is new development then, is that correct? Bringing.
by and large, yeah, this is vacant land that is being annexed into the city for development purposes.
Right, I see, okay. Yeah, that's an important word. Usually to discuss that with Alan, so I can see now what that is. I'm very, very interested in in being able to further the annexations, you know, with the long time pockets that we have. Okay, also, let's see, I lost my page here. On page 19, Doug, the building division projects, down where it says in plan check about the Artisan Square, but then Montgomery Wards and the Canyon Hills Assembly. What are we going to be doing? I've had some concerned calls from regarding the Montgomery Wards building and you know what the wonderful uses that is being used for. So what's going on there?
Well, my understanding is they are just proposing some remodeling of the existing buildings. I believe that they are not completely redeveloping the entire site. As you may know, that property is kind of directly across the street from where the high-speed rail station may ultimately be. So there could be, you know, a higher and better use of that property sometime down the road. So they're just, I believe they are going to, part of that is to facilitate a new kind of satellite campus or sanctuary for their church.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the upper room, you know, yeah, that's being very enthusiastically enjoyed. So, okay, well, thank you, Doug. Good, lot going on as always, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. McIsaac. Madam Clerk, please call the next budget presentation.
Recreation and Parks.
Ms. Hoover, please.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of City Council. I wanted to introduce a few people before I get started. Of course, I am Diane Hoover, the Director of Recreation and Parks, and I have a new budget business manager, Rajan Mistry, and I have Darren Budak, Assistant Parks and Recreation Director, and I have Devin Doherty, who is our Planning and Construction Manager. And I have several employees in the back. They're the remaining employees here for these budget presentations, and they have all been a part of the budget presentation you'll see in the next few minutes. The mission of the Recreation and Parks Department is to enhance the quality of life through parks, programs, and partnerships. And I'll go through a few examples of each one of those as we go along in this budget presentation. The capital improvement projects that we completed were the Bill Park Greens playground rehabilitation in Ward 4 and in Coral Keys playground rehabilitation in Ward 6. In addition, we added a shade structure over the picnic areas at Jefferson Park. And we assisted Public Works, as Nick said earlier in his presentation, with the Bright House Network's amphitheater improvements, and also for the Centennial Plaza fountain, which our staff is now maintaining on a regular basis. And then the pedestrian and bicycle access improvements to the Kern River, from the Kern River Parkway to Commercial Way in Truxton. So some of the actions that we took this past year to reduce our water use included the Proposition 84 funding for putting MaxiCom in 28 parks, 5 streetscapes, and 3 new weather stations. And then for phase 2 of the water reduction was a grant, water energy grant from the Water Resources Department state for $681,000. And those were for the additional remaining parks. So 14 parks have been installed. And I was just updated this morning that only now 3 parks are remaining to be installed with MaxiCom. So we will complete that installation before the August 31 deadline that we had set for ourselves. Then this, with both of those combined, this is an annual water savings of 30% compared to our base year of 2013. That's equivalent. I wanted to give kind of an idea of what that looks like. It's about 388 average households of water use every year that we're saving. So the other accomplishments included adding park security with Bakersfield Police Department, and in addition to a contracted security service. We increased our marketing through Facebook, and we achieved the Tree City USA designation for the 18th consecutive year. We've had several partnerships and sponsorships to help us with our swim programs, lessons and passes through Kaiser Permanente, First 5 Kern for children 5 and under can get $5 swim lessons, and USA Swim Program, again, reduced cost swim lessons. For this year alone, we're offering, through those 3 sponsorships, 950 reduced swim lessons for children throughout the city. The Kern Trophy donates our softball trophies every season for our softball program. And the Bakersfield Breakfast Rotary has, for the past 3 years, sponsored the 1,000 Flags event at the Park at Riverwalk at Memorial Day weekend. If you ever get a chance to see that, it's a fantastic event to see all those flags flying. And they also sponsor now are taking on the project of San Miguel Grove, and they do 2 cleanups a year at San Miguel Grove, and we're very appreciative of those. Some of the continued sponsorships include Bright House Networks, sponsors our Movies in the Park program, and through the Kern County Health Department and various nonprofits, we have free fitness programs that are offered throughout our parks on a regular basis. The DBA sponsors the Third Thursdays at Mill Creek Central Park, and the Bakersfield Museum of Art and the Kern County Hispanic Chamber of Commerce does the Alteros de Familia program just after Halloween every year. This brings in thousands of people to Central Park and Mill Creek. And the Camp Out Against Cancer at State Farm Sports Village is an annual event as well. Other partners and sponsors include the Martin Luther Egg Hunt. Various people come together and nonprofit groups to make sure that every child has something to take home. They sponsor many of the gifts and many of the things that go into the eggs. And then the Good Neighbor Festival, sponsored by the Southeast Neighborhood Partnership, is a big event every fall at Martin Luther King Park. So the Department of Recreation and Parks has 3 separate divisions: the Recreation Division, the Parks Division, by far our largest division, and also then the Administrative Division. The Parks Division is the only division in our department that has a superintendent, and our superintendent is back there, Ken Trone. So the proposed budget, we're proposing a cut of 2.5% basically, for a total of $18,552,464. And I'll go through some of those cuts here in the next few slides. We also have the Amtrak operations, and that is for the maintenance of the outside area of the Amtrak. And we get that appropriated to us every year through Amtrak. Our staffing complement last year was 150, and our proposed staffing complement is 146 employees. In our recreation division, we serve over 500,000 people in our recreation programs. This includes recreation programs that we keep attendance records for, and also some of our reservations that they tell us approximately how many people are going to be part of that reservation. This is an increase over 21% over the last 5 years of people served. And our recreation division, to serve all those people, only has 11 full-time recreation staff. And in the first 6 months of 2016, it shows an increase in all of our areas, athletics, aquatics, MLK programs, and Saunders. So to meet our cuts this year, we have taken some steps to eliminate a few programs or just to reduce some hours in some of our programs. So we are proposing to eliminate the after-school program at Silver Creek Community Center and Park. This is because of the Boys and Girls Club has expanded their programs into many elementary schools around the city, and there's an elementary school right next to Silver Creek, and that parents have opted to keep their kids right in the school instead of having them walk to the community center to participate in our after-school program. So we went from a very large program to only serving about half a dozen children after school. So we just decided to eliminate that program. And then our evening lap swimming at McMurtry from November 1st through May 11th. This is after all of the swim teams are practicing. They end their practices around 7 o'clock, so we're able to offer evening lap swim from 7 to 8:30, but many people don't come back after 7 o'clock, so that attendance also drops way off. So for our proposed upcoming year, we plan to eliminate that lap swim program. And then reduce a half hour of midday lap swim at McMurtry on a year-round basis. We still have 2 hours for them to swim at lunchtime, or 2.5 hours. And so by eliminating a half hour, we can save a little bit of staff time that way. And eliminate 2 of 3 family fun nights. Normally, we have a family fun night, 1 in June, 1 in July, and 1 in August. Our highest attended one is in July, so we plan to keep that one. 6 of 8 toddler parent and me programs. This is a very popular program when we first introduced it, but then parents started to drop out and say, okay, well, maybe just a couple times. So we did listen to them, and we're offering it 2 times this summer. Then reduce a half hour of summer rec swim at McMurtry, MLK, and Jefferson daily. This allows for a better transition between our swim lessons. We have swim lessons in the morning before recreation swim, and we have swim lessons in the evening after recreational swim. And so this transition time helps tremendously and will help tremendously as the year goes on. This is our first day of open swim. All the pools are open today, and the new lifeguards are getting training and acclimated to their new job. And then lastly, reduce a half hour of rec swim at Silver Creek. Silver Creek is now, their hours are now consistent with the other 3 pools. So to do that, we have eliminated 1 program coordinator and 2 program leaders at Silver Creek to help with that reduction in programming and staffing. And then in the administration division, we just froze 1 full-time clerk in our office. In the Parks division, the budget cuts are probably noticeable already. We have frozen 3 full-time labor positions in the parks, and 10 temporary labor positions are left vacant this year. That's a total loss of 16,000 work hours. Our acreage has increased, and our workforce has decreased. This means less frequency of mowing at parks. Now our parks are on a 2-week mowing schedule as opposed to a 10-day mowing schedule in the past. And less frequency of the streetscape maintenance. We can't get to every weed every week, but we will try to get to the weeds as soon as possible and scheduled on a regular basis. And one of the things that we did for efficiency is now we have what's called a mass trimming program, where several of our employees just focus on one area and mass trim that, and then we're able to use roll-offs and fill up the roll-offs and take them. So it's actually more efficient to do it. We are scheduled throughout the city on a regular basis to do that. Each area gets mass trimmed 2 to 3 times a year. as opposed to trying to do it once a month in certain areas. And then some of the other areas that impact our budget are the Kern River encampments cleanups, the West Side Parkway weed and trash abatement that we do in conjunction with the Solid Waste Department and some volunteers. And then the City Source mobile app program. Whenever there's a sprinkler head malfunctioning or a valve that's stuck, we get that on the mobile app and we try to respond to it as soon as possible right away. Sometimes as soon as 15 minutes because it gives a location of right where it is and we're able to get the staff out there. If it's on a weekend, it takes a little bit longer, but we do respond as soon as possible on those because we know how important that is. Our growth in 2015-16, acres growth was 14.8 acres, and our proposed acreage in 16-17 is almost 60 acres. What does that look like in the department as far as maintenance? In years past, our maintenance crews have been responsible for approximately 12 acres. This year, they're responsible for more than 14 acres an employee that's out there. And that's an average increase of 17.7% over 2012-13 year. Some of the other outside factors that impact our budget are the minimum wage increase that impacts our seasonal part-time people and our lifeguard staff. And it also creates a compaction issue. So each year we'll have to just look at how that impacts our overall budget and then the compaction for our full-time employees as well. And then the state mandated water restrictions was 31% last year. And then this year it's still unknown, but it's probably going to be closer to 10%. Now, so some of our capital improvement projects from CDBG funding include the Beal Park and Wilson Park and Stern Park playground shade structures. Always when we put a shade structure over the playgrounds, people want to come out and play more often, so it's a very good thing to do. And all of our new improvements that we do with playgrounds now, we do include the shade structure as part of that project. The park improvement funding will be used for the State Farm Sports Village Phase 3, for Mason Marin Sports Complex Phase 2, and then 2 more playground improvements, Wayside Park and Garden Park. That completes my presentation, and I'll take any questions.
Vice Mayor Hanson, please.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Diane, for that presentation. You know, it's a fact of life that this is a very difficult area to have to control. We all recognize that public safety is number one. You know, fire, police, we have to be there. And those are areas that makes it very difficult for us to look at any decrease. I have a couple of questions, though. The maintenance district money that's collected, does that go to the general fund, Alan?
Councilmember Hanson, no. It is tracked and used for either the streetscapes or the parks in the areas from which the assessments are collected. It supplements the operating budget of the Parks and Recreation Department for those purposes.
So it's allowed in there or whatever, because in effect, you're doing that work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How about, probably a silly question, but I'll ask it anyway. It's because of the, you know, I saw something in here about parenting toddlers and all this stuff. Is there any way that we could have any volunteer programs, or does that work, Diane?
The difficult part about volunteers is that they're not reliable on a regular basis. We do have many programs like our exercise programs that are in the parks. Those are volunteer. We don't pay the instructors to come out and do that. They just come out and do it through the health department. And so relying on volunteers to teach or to provide programs on a regular basis becomes sketchy.
You know, as the city grows, we have increased parks. You got 59 additional acres to take care of this year, whatever. This is going to be an ongoing problem for us, regardless of, you know, our income increases. However, we're going to need more police, we're going to need more fire, we're going to need more roads, road repairs, this type of thing. This is going to be a real challenge. I don't know. I'm just going to make a comment. City manager and staff, you guys got your work cut out for you on this one, because it's so critical for us to keep our, and Terry made a comment earlier about people look at our city, look at our medians, you know, this type of thing. And if it gets kind of shabby looking, I kind of cringe a little bit when I'm walking along or driving, whatever. So I wish I had an answer, okay, but I appreciate your presentation. Appreciate all the work of your employees. I mean, it sounds like everybody's really stepped up. I mean, this is an example of a company, the company being the city of Bakersfield, having to, you know, because of reduced income, have to reduce expenses, and we're doing it. We don't like it. It makes it difficult for people, but it's necessary. Thank you.
Councilmember Maxwell, please.
Thank you, Mayor Hall. Diane, on your one Department of Recreation Parks, actions taken to reduce water use, you state that estimated annual savings was 30%. I was under the impression it was 50%, because we've always heralded how much water the Parks Division had saved, and that they were actually responsible for a tremendous amount that the Cal Water, because I know that a lot of our parks are in the Cal Water area, that if it hadn't been for our parks, that they probably wouldn't have saved as much. And as I say, that 30% isn't right, is it?
Mayor, Councilmember Maxwell, yes, in last year, our big summer season, we did save over 50%. This report is the Maxicom annual savings estimated going forward. We think we're going to be able to save that much.
Okay.
So yes, you're absolutely right.
Okay,
Yes,
I
but this
want to
was an
clarify that for
estimated
people, because
annual.
anybody looking at this might get the wrong impression, because I know that the Parks Division did probably the best job of anybody in the whole city in terms of saving water.
Thank you.
But unfortunately, that came at a price. How many trees did we lose?
I'm going to say, yes, approximately 2,000 trees that we lost mostly in the streetscapes.
Okay.
Our park trees we were able to pretty much save, but
I know I've been over to Jasper, and you lost a few over there.
we did.
Yeah, so, you know, unfortunate. And, you know, while everybody can be heralded for one thing, I mean, everything always comes at a cost. And everything is subject to change. So I think you guys did a good job in saving the water. I'm sorry that we lost so many trees, and I'm sure that the people that are representative of the Tree Foundation will look forward with us and see if maybe we can replace those trees with trees that will get through droughts, because we're in California, we're going to have droughts. We're in Bakersfield, it gets hot. So otherwise, I thought it was a very good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Rivera, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Diane, and thank you to your staff. I had one thing I wanted to bring up, but I had no idea that so many trees had died. That's actually quite alarming. So what are we doing? Have we already taken those out of the ground, and are we planning to replace them? Is there a plan associated with that? How does that work?
Yes, we are removing those dead trees on a regular basis, and the stumps to go with them. We used all of our contracted services for the tree contract, and once the budget is approved, then we can go forward with another tree contract and start removing the remaining of them. And then for the replacement part, there are several state grants that are now in the planning process that we'll be able to apply for. Those applications will be due in the fall and then probably awarded early next year. So we're hoping for 2 or 3 of those grants. And we are as well working with the Tree Foundation, and they have some ideas for some grants too, and replenishing our trees.
Okay, well, that's great. Whatever support I think this body can give you in getting those grants would be great. I'm not a tree expert, but I would hope that we do our due diligence in ensuring we're planting something that might. This ain't going to be the last time, and contrary to what Donald Trump thinks, we're in a drought, and we'll probably, we're going to have issues with water for I think the rest of time in California. So, I think it'd be very important that we plant the right stuff. The one request I had was in this, so often the budget presentations from departments also talk about goals and priorities for the year. And a priority I'd really like to work with you and your staff, and I imagine this will include quite a few other departments as well, is Martin Luther King Park. The community center is fantastic. You have an excellent staff. It is a great facility. It has great events. The park to the west is a mess. And so I'd like to maybe be able to sit down with you guys in the next few weeks to begin putting together some type of action plan to start addressing the long-standing issues we've had there. And I know we've talked about it, and I've talked to Alan about it, and I know we know there are issues. I'd like to start identifying ways to make it just a little bit better. That park is a little rough, and it's in Ward 1, and it's I think there's no reason why it can't be a great example for the rest of the city. So if we could coordinate in setting something up, I'd appreciate that. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Councilmember Sullivan, please.
Thank you. Good report, Diane, as always. It's a hardworking but very fun, wonderful, important department. Okay, when you first started referring to Maxicom, I'm assuming that that's the artificial turf?
No, Maxicom is an irrigation controlled system through a weather station and master computer controlled.
Oh, I see, to determine when it needs water and when it does not need water.
That's right.
Wow, that makes sense. That's amazing and be very, is that expensive to,
Actually, with this 2 state grants, we received over $1 million to be able to install that. And so now that we're getting to completing the installation stage, we'll get into the management stage of that.
I see. Wow,
So.
technology, that's amazing and really makes sense how that would be so helpful for our conservation. Diane, actually, I was thinking that it was referring to artificial turf. Now, I know that there is, more of an expense to put that in, but it just seems so obvious to me that even over the period of a year, considering, and mainly on medians.
Yes.
For instance, on Stein, from right around our fire station and Ridgeview High School, out there, the only thing there is it's the median. And to begin with, actually, I had visualized, and I was under the impression that all of that new turf was going to be artificial turf, and it was unfinished for over 1.5 years, and then it turned out that grass was put in, which I was disappointed and felt that was not really a good decision, because don't you agree that overall, it's going to be more cost-effective to go to the extra expense of the turf, because then it's the minimum, the less water, but also the maintenance. You know, now we're going to every 2 weeks, but that particular area, I go out there every Sunday, and it's looking real bad, and it's understandable, because that's just one of our hundreds of streets, and it's only the median, but there's grass, and now it's dying, and, weeds, and that's not a criticism, that's just understanding that everything cannot be perfect. So places like that, can we, do you think it's feasible that we could, or is there a plan to replace?
Actually, we are working with Public Works on street medians and streetscapes, and an overall plan on how that would look going forward. Yes.
Yeah.
So many of these medians are planned 4 or 5 years in advance, and then they're installed, 4 years later. So by the time you had mentioned it, it had already been in the planning and approval stage to be completed and put turf in.
Yeah.
But yes, we are working with standards and using less and less plant material and more of rocks, artificial turf, different combinations like that.
Yeah, and I would think that, are there any in the future to be done that can be stopped as far as grass being put in? Because it just seems like, it's certainly doable to make a change, and it's just a shame to putting grass in those medians.
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Sullivan, as Diane had indicated, several of these plans have been approved for several years. So the developers have already received approval to install the turf, the landscaping, the irrigation as shown. We can ask the developer to make those changes. However, synthetic turf and some of these other installations are quite more expensive than installing turf. We can't make them because they've already received approval.
Okay. Now, Stein, for instance, would have that been, Nick, would have that been by a developer? I think that was a city expense, wasn't it?
I'm not sure of the location on Stein.
Yeah, well, out by
In front of
Ridgeview High School. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, that's a city one. Yeah.
Right, and a median like that. Many of the newer, nicer areas, they also have the grass on the side of the streets. But that is an example of just the median down the center. So it just seems like if there's ever something like that, again, that would be a city plan and expense, we should not put grass, because then we're stuck with the watering and the maintenance. And Diane,
Can I make one clarification? Alan had remarked on something. We are not approving new developments with turf in them, but there are some that...
grass turf or...
A grass turf, correct. But there are some older plan sets that have been out there for some time that may have some grass turf on them.
Well, the ones with only the median, it just would be to our advantage, I would think, to not put grass in those.
Correct. We're working with Recreation and Parks to define
Great.
areas that would be acceptable, smaller areas that would be affordable for synthetic turf, and then looking at planting areas of trees and low-maintenance shrubs, and then, like Diane had indicated, more use of rocks and hardscape materials.
Thank you, Dick. And Diane, at Beal Park, it was noticeable that we did lose a number of trees in Beal Park. Yeah, it was noticeable that many of those big trees.
Yes.
But it's great now how when we do lose a tree, they remove the stump, and they're able to do a good job. But did you say that it would be only by grant we'd have to wait to get a grant to be able to replace some of the trees, or is the city in a position to do that?
We do not have funding to replant many of those trees. We do, again, work with the Tree Foundation, and volunteers also come out to the parks. It's harder to manage volunteers on the streetscape or in the medians. So many of the trees that we lost were in the streetscapes and medians. But you're right, in Jastrow and in Beale Park, some of those trees were in decline for many years, and they just happened to.
Probably one of the oldest,
Yes,
oldest parks.
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
trees.
Some of them were very hollow and ready to fall anyway, so we had to take them down.
I see. Okay, well, thank you. Good report.
Councilmember Harley, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Diane, I consider Rec and Parks another one of those get-her-done departments. Helped a lot out in Ward 7. And I want to thank you and Public Works again for the partnership of, what to do with all those wood chips that we've had. And we're dispersing them in a lot of those median areas that haven't been improved yet, as at least a stopgap measure, or maybe even a permanent measure. And it's totally water tolerant. It's cheap. We already have it. So I want to thank you and Works for that partnership also. I have a question regarding park security. What are the months that park security runs again? It's not year-long, is it?
Well, we do try to run them year-long, especially at Martin Luther King Community Center, and then in our parks, mostly from May through September.
Okay. Is any of that paid through grants, or is that just?
No, that's we don't have a grant to do that.
Have we looked into that by any chance?
I have not, but I can certainly try. A lot of times the grants are for one-time services and not for operation services, but I can check on that.
Okay, great. Thanks again. Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hoover, for your presentation. If there are no further council comments, we stand adjourned.